North side of Chicago, June 12, 2019, seemed like any ordinary day. The city was going about its business as usual, until that morning when a woman's body was found at an abandoned construction site. Upon receiving a 911 call, police arrived at the scene and were faced with a horrifying sight. The body was dressed in a Ghostface mask and costume, straight out of a famous horror movie. The authorities immediately notified the prosecutor's office and the homicide division. This wasn't a simple murder case. It seemed like part of a carefully crafted trap. The victim was 25-year-old Melinda Carter. She was a bright, energetic architect who had spent her life aiming for a successful career. Melinda had worked on several high-profile projects and was employed by one of Chicago's most prestigious architecture firms. But tragically that morning, her body was found in the dark corner of an abandoned building. She was wearing a Ghostface mask, and her body had been stabbed 11 times. When police arrived at the scene, they immediately knew that this wasn't just an act of rage. It was part of a calculated plan. The investigation began, and early findings focused on a masked party that Melinda had attended the night before. The party was hosted at the home of Kevin Mitchell, one of Chicago's well-known real estate moguls. It was confirmed that Melinda had attended the party dressed in a Ghostface costume. But after leaving the party, no one knew where she had gone or why she never returned. Melinda's boyfriend, Ryan Davenport, quickly became the focus of the police's attention. Ryan admitted that he and Melinda had a big argument that night. He claimed that after the argument, Melinda left to go to the gym. However, the police were suspicious of this statement. It didn't make sense that Melinda would go to the gym after a heated argument. Since Ryan was the last known person to see her alive, he became the prime suspect. Additionally, Ryan was known for being jealous and controlling. Melinda's mother, Linda Carter, provided more details about her daughter's relationship with Ryan. Ryan always tried to control Melinda. She thought about leaving him many times, but somehow she always felt like she had to go back, she said. This statement only increased suspicion that Ryan could be responsible for the murder. However, there was still not enough evidence. As Ryan was interrogated, the suspicions grew stronger. Ryan had played a significant role in Melinda's life, attempting to isolate her from her friends on numerous occasions. His controlling behavior had become a red flag to those around him. Melinda's friends frequently mentioned how unhappy she had become because of Ryan. But could his controlling nature have led him to murder? The police were searching for answers to that question. Ryan's sister, Sophie Davenport, was also questioned about the case. Sophie had spent her entire life under Ryan's shadow, enduring his aggressive and controlling behavior. Growing up in Ryan's shadow had impacted Sophie in many ways, but the idea that Sophie could have been involved in the crime hadn't crossed the police's minds. During her questioning, Sophie appeared to be protecting her brother. Ryan loved Melinda. He would never hurt her, she insisted. However, the detectives noticed a few inconsistencies in Sophie's statements. As the investigation deepened, the police began to uncover more details about Melinda's final moments. Phone records revealed that Melinda had been in contact with someone after the party, but that person wasn't Ryan. The records showed several text messages exchanged between Melinda and Sophie on the night of the murder. The possibility that Sophie had met up with Melinda after the party became more likely. Melinda had left the party after a heated argument with Ryan, but instead of going to the gym, she had met up with Sophie. The police intensified their focus on the inconsistencies in Sophie's statements. Her phone's location data placed her in the same area as Melinda at the time of the murder. The fact that Sophie was at the scene began to change the course of the investigation. As police dug deeper into Sophie's life, they realized that she had been living under the oppressive control of her brother Ryan for years. His controlling and aggressive behavior had taken a psychological toll on Sophie. Evan Miller, Sophie's ex-boyfriend, had ended their relationship because of Ryan's constant interference. Evan realized that Ryan's obsessive need to control Sophie's life was too much to handle, and so he walked away from the relationship. This was the breaking point in Sophie's life. Sophie blamed Ryan for Evan leaving her. In her mind, Ryan had ruined not just her life, but also Melinda's. As her anger grew, it morphed into a desire for revenge. Melinda became an innocent victim of Sophie's vendetta. Sophie knew that Melinda was the most important person in Ryan's life. Ryan would have done anything to keep her. So Sophie planned to destroy Ryan by taking Melinda's life. When she planted her brother's fingerprints on the murder knife, Sophie thought she had created the perfect plan. Her goal was to have Ryan charged with murder and ruin his life. But there was one small detail she had overlooked: the security camera footage. Security cameras near the abandoned building where the murder took place captured the biggest flaw in Sophie's plan. Sophie had planned everything down to the last detail, but the security footage revealed the truth, unraveling her scheme. As the police increased the pressure on Sophie, she began to break down emotionally. The jealousy, anger, and years of pent-up rage became too much to bear. Ryan ruined everything, not just my life, but everyone's. Melinda got caught up in his obsessive love, but this was never about her. It was always about Ryan, Sophie confessed through tears. The cold, calculated confession stunned the police. The person who had meticulously planned and carried out the murder wasn't Ryan, the prime suspect from the beginning, but his quiet, introverted younger sister, Sophie. According to her confession, Sophie had met up with Melinda that night and gained her trust. Melinda had been confused and upset after the party. Sophie, pretending to comfort her, had lured Melinda to the abandoned building where she attacked her. After stabbing Melinda, Sophie placed the Ghostface mask on her body. Melinda had fallen into Sophie's trap and lost her life. Sophie then planted the murder knife with Ryan's fingerprints, intending to frame him for the crime. Sophie's plan was for Ryan to spend the rest of his life in prison. In her mind, she wasn't just killing Melinda, she was destroying Ryan's future. But Sophie had made one fatal mistake. She didn't consider the security cameras. With Sophie's confession, the police finally pieced together the details of the crime. Ryan had initially seemed guilty, which had played perfectly into Sophie's plan. But the evidence from the security cameras exposed the holes in her story. Sophie's confession was the final nail in the coffin. She had been willing to do anything to ruin her brother, but in the end, she ruined herself. When all the evidence was collected, it was clear that Sophie had planned every detail of the crime, but had still made a crucial mistake. The Ghostface mask, the stab wounds, and the brutal way Melinda's life had been taken revealed the depth of Sophie's rage and desire for revenge. Sophie was arrested, and the tragic story came to an end in a way no one had expected. Ryan, the prime suspect, was innocent, while Sophie, the real killer, was brought to justice. Sophie was sentenced to life in prison for the premeditated murder. Ryan, on the other hand, was given a 1-year sentence for domestic violence and threatening behavior toward Melinda. The brutal murder of Melinda Carter would be remembered as one of the most tragic events in Chicago for years to come.